anymore. Welcome, everybody. Solo Spotlight. This is a really exciting one. This is close to home, literally. I'm here with Jesse Watson.
Everybody.
How you doing? Former municipal employee, owner of Boxcar Coffee, community champion, running in the Anilnook ward in this upcoming municipal election, October 20th.
Yep, that's the date.
October 20th. He's here to talk about everything to do with coffee, elections, community leadership. We're going to be talking about some communities close to home like Calder. And yeah, I'm very excited. Thank you so much for joining me today. I remember I was telling my girlfriend, I was like, I feel like I know this guy. And then I saw Boxcar Coffee and I was like, there it is.
Yeah. And I thought the same. I saw you and I was like, I know this guy. I think he was the loud one at Boxcar.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. No, I love the coffee shop. I love the design. I think it's super unique. You did it in a community you have strong roots in, which I found about later, which is even more inspiring. And it's a true testament to this kind of like grassroots, like staying within your own system and really trying to like uplift a community. Going into that, where did like your leadership aspirations start for you? Did it start at a young age or did it start like into later adulthood?
Yeah, like I've always loved community. I'm like a planner. I'm a city planner trained, never worked in planning, but I care a lot about, the input government has and what people can have in community. And so I always wanted to volunteer in some capacity, which is kind of a thing that's fading, right? A lot of people don't like to volunteer anymore. So I always thought like to be part of a change, you often have to lead change. And the coffee shop was, it's a blip in the journey of where I've gone, but coffee is probably the most community focused thing you can do, right? It's like the epitome of local. It's like people are happy. Everyone's having a coffee. People aren't breaking up in a coffee shop. That happens in restaurants, right? Mm-hmm. So it's always a positive place for community, and it has like a true meaningful impact, especially in Edmonton these days.
Yeah, I definitely noticed, like, I frequent a lot like Remedy Cafe, Boxcar Coffee, Waves, and you can tell it's there's a type of culture, right? And what I like about coffee shops is that everybody's independently doing what they're doing. It's just in like a collective space. And it's like everybody has their own little bubbles and like nobody, you know what I mean? And everybody's kind of just like staying out of each other's way, but being in the same area. And it's interesting because I think doing that, would you like, I'm trying to get my thoughts together here. Like, was this something to platform more of like a way for you to like create that community, if that makes sense?
Yeah, like where Boxcar is, it's in Calder. I always thought Calder was like the underdog in Edmonton. It's got a rough past. It's a train history, right? But, whenever you said Calder when I first moved there like 12, 13 years ago, it was like, oh, Calder? That's kind of a rough and upcoming area. It went through a bit of a decline in the 90s, right? And so I thought to myself, like, hey, it's charming. It's got some history there. And how do you improve it fundamentally, right? You have some assets that are there. You got heritage. You got some culture. You have a community that has its own identity. And I thought, yeah, like, there's an opportunity here. I saw where infill was going, where the city's going, people moving out of the downtown to, more charming settings, so to speak. And I just saw the writing on the wall, man. And I thought like, yeah, truly, this is an up and coming spot.
Was your foundational knowledge from working with like municipal government, did that like help you put yourself in that opportunity? Or like, was it more independent learning of like how to actually own a business?
Yeah, like I'd never owned a business actually, but my dad's an entrepreneur, had a bike shop. So that was pretty local down in Medicine Hat. The city, I've always worked in real estate world. So it's always been leasing and properties. So I kind of got to understand over time. I started at the GOA actually in infrastructure.
Right.
So it really got me understanding about what was valuable, at least in the perception of money, right? But what government often doesn't really help with is more like the community value, right? It's like there's dollars and cents, but then there's community social value, right? And so, yeah, I kind of, on my journey, you know, with real estate, I kind of got to understand the city a bit better. And I saw just opportunity as a planner, seeing where community can go and how you can grow something.
Now, when starting Boxcar Coffee, what do you think were like the biggest like challenge? Like what were the hardest things? Was it understanding like the health and safety side of it?
Coffee, you enter anything you do new, you know, you're kind of like the new kid on the block. So there's a little bit hesitation from the industry, but also a huge learning curve, right? And you kind of have to pretend, right? So I'm going to these like coffee sipping things and I don't know what the heck I'm doing. And I'm like, do people actually taste differences in coffee? Like legitimately, you know, I'm used to going to Starbucks, Tim Hortons, like everybody else, but this is like specialty world, right? This is like next level coffee. And so the learning curve was tough. I remember there was another coffee shop that came like the first week we opened, right? And we're just flying by the seat of our pants. In fact, we were Googling how to make certain drinks as people ordered them. It was that basic, right? And I was so scared. They asked us for these sizes of cappuccinos and I'm just like, holy cow, my milk, my technique, everything is bad. And they were so humbling and so nice. They ended up training us later to make us really great. But you know, you realize that the industry wants you to succeed. You know, you don't have to be afraid to try it. So yeah, it was really just pretending to be something that you weren't yet, but realizing that everyone's okay with that and they're going to help you along your journey. But also, yeah, you want to be successful, and restaurant worlds in Edmonton, everything's about newness, the new place, the new shiny stuff. And so you kind of get overwhelmed, right? You're like, oh, I'm going to go here, the crackle this, the new that. But then you realize like, look, I have a brand. I got to just focus on what's important to us and what's, you know, north side. I thought about prices, you know, I don't want to outprice anybody because it's a demographic, it's an affordable spot. But at the same time, you got to pay money. Bills. So we are the cheapest coffee shop out there. Legit, you go. Outside of Tim Hortons, of course. But we still employ people. Everyone's local. And we're doing better every day, which is good.
Yeah. And what was the type of like strategy you used for like getting out there? Like, was it a lot of advertising and promoting, or what was your kind of strategy with that? In terms of just getting people, just gaining recognition at all, was it just putting yourself in like rooms with different people and kind of spreading yourself that way? Or was it like mass media?
So I'm married to an architect, which helps because our building's kind of unique.
Yes.
Right? So you come, there's a mirror. You're like, okay, this is weird. And then you don't know how to get in. You're like, okay, it's like part of a club. So it has some things going for it, right? Plus it was in Calder, so people are already, oh, that's weird. So you have all these factors. But advertising was zero. And it was zero because of the influencer world, right, on Instagram, which was hell for a lot because it was a roller coaster, right? You know, a month in, all of a sudden you'd look, you're like, holy cow, that's this foodie girl. Next thing you know, 3 days later, you're just like flying out the door. You don't have enough staff. You're running out everything. You're trying to manage that, but it just kept people coming. And so it was like a natural branding. We didn't have to pay people, paid promotion. So it was really good in the beginning. Then you start becoming friends with them because, you know, you're sending them stuff. Hey, come try this stuff out. And then it just naturally happened. So the first year was tough because you couldn't plan. But after a while, it levels out and you get to understand. And so we're very thankful that we didn't actually have to advertise anything.
That must be an interesting relationship with like, it must always be, even the conversation that we're having, it's always interesting to see when like people collaborate, but it's like I'll give you an example. A guy that I talked to, Greg Wasserman, he's the head of relationships at RSS.com. And he said, like, he said it in great. And he said, monetization doesn't always amount to dollars. He's like, right? So like it all depends on what your goal is. And it's very interesting to see people collaborate and their goal is completely different. Of like a goal for this would be to get recognition and people back to your brand, and a goal, and it kind of goes this way, but there's like a moment in time where people can like link up, and it's really interesting how that works. And sometimes the relationship works, or they're like, hey, I want a bunch of free shit, and like you're gonna do this, and like, and there's ego involved, and then it just doesn't work. But it's an interesting skill to have, because you have to have a level of understanding of like, oh, there's both like a little on the line for everybody, right? So I have to be a little bit more like, I have to understand a little more, or have to be a little bit more like courteous, or what's the word? Consideration. You have to be more like considerate.
Yeah, and trust me, you don't like all of them out there, right?
No.
Some of them have different demands. Sometimes they'd show up and suddenly they're like, well, you're comping all this, right?
And you're like, what?
And you're like, am I? Because I'm taking a hit here, right?
Yeah.
But some things you just do because you know it's the right decision. Or you have people that reach out and they're like, hey, I can do a paid partnership. I'm looking at their Instagram. I'm like, well, I have more followers than you, bro.
So why is it worth it?
So you kind of play it. And sometimes you're like, actually, this will help them.
Yeah.
And so there's partnerships that make sense, right?
And there's sometimes too in like the spirit of community where you're like, hey, I remember when I was the person that was trying to do, right? And it's like based on the conversation you have with them, based on like what you kind of like your intuition, you're like, all right, cool. Like I'll do it.
Yeah. We donate coffee to everyone.
Yeah.
Like if a school needs coffee, whatever, we're just taking coffee. Like everyone who asks us, maybe I shouldn't say this, but everyone who asks us for a gift card, for a donation, whatever, we just give the gift card, because it's like, it's the right thing to do. Sometimes it helps a cause.
Do you find that gets over leveraged? Like in our earlier conversations when I was talking about getting conned, do you ever is that ever a consideration where you're like, oh, my kindness is taken for weakness?
The only thing I ask is if they've been there. If you haven't even been there, dude, then you're not getting a gift card.
Yeah, that's like when I bring some people on for like interviews and they're like, oh, I'm on camera, and you're like,
really?
Yeah, you're like, come on, man. It's like right there. You're just like, oh,
like, yes,
man.
You are.
Yeah, but no, now, was there any like transitioning in terms of like, because I'm assuming like where you were working with municipal was a lot of like office work. Like how much like people to people like relationships did you have, and like was that like you're jumping in being this like customer service, or was that already like some soft skills that you had?
Yeah, like I've always been a manager in government. So I've always managed unions, love them or hate them.
Right.
I've always been in that world, but I've always been in operations. So I've parks and roads. So it was like, grass and snow, right? So I was always in the field working with people who actually did the tasks, and then listening to residents either happy or mad, usually mad. Mm-hmm. And then real estate, it was also operational. So it was always managing properties, right? And whether internal for city or external impacts. So you always had to talk to people. It was like a fundamental of the role. I couldn't just hide behind a desk. But it teaches you, when the public isn't happy, you have to learn on the fly how to manage that appropriately. You want to give some information, not too much, but make them happy and leave with a positive impression, right? And that's pretty much how you run a business at the end of the day. You want people happy. You have to be able to talk to them, and you have to be able to manage a team to make it successful. So obviously I learned that over time. I got higher and higher positions in government, managing more and more people with more accountability, but with it just came more opportunity to make changes that were more impactful. But now I'm kind of at a peak. I could only make so much change. Middle management, you're kind of stuck there.
Yeah.
You can't make, everything's like a pyramid. So yeah, you think moving up you can do more.
Now, one question that just popped into my head because I think this is interesting. When you work for like an organization like a government, your ability to like take criticism, it kind of gets like scapegoated on like, oh, it's not really me. It's just like the system. Now you have your own business. is your ability to take criticism different now that it's your own?
Yeah, like at the city, you could always blame something.
Or you could be like, listen, I didn't make the rules, I'm just following them.
And I use that a lot, even though I did the rules.
Right.
You know, sometimes you just do that. Oh, that wasn't me, that was the other guy.
Yeah.
You know, criticism in a restaurant world is actually tougher because you take it so personally. You're like, well, I curated this perfect setting, in my opinion, and then someone doesn't like it like you do. You're kind of like, damn, you have to learn to really accept that, right?
Yeah.
And truly take that. But that's actually probably where a lot of the learning came with a coffee shop, because in the beginning, people were a 4.8, one of the best in the city on Google reviews. Okay.
Right.
But even getting a 1 star one day, it's like, holy, that hurts you. And there's not even a reason.
Mm-hmm.
You're like, dude, like, help me out here. How do we improve? Some of it's, you can't control it all. Some people just do that.
And people I don't think people understand how, like, my girlfriend works for like a dental clinic, and like, you would be surprised how much these Google reviews actually like translate into people coming and people not coming, right? And I could only imagine when people give criticism, but it's kind of like, it doesn't have substance, or it's just like benign, where you're like, you're like, what?
Like, we have these cups and they're made out of coffee husks. Like, these are biodegradable, amazing cups. We paid a lot of money. This isn't just IKEA, right? This is like next level. Shout out to Husky. But people will write a review, I don't like the plastic cups. And it's like, okay, well, they're not plastic. Can you help? Sometimes people will change their review.
Yeah.
But people read that, and I look, and already 40 people have read it. You're like, hey, the message is spreading, right?
Yeah.
And that's where, misconceptions spread. And that's probably where you're a bit naive when you open a business. You don't realize how much little things can impact stuff fast.
Mm-hmm.
But you also learn how to cope with it and manage it and reach out to them. And sometimes people are open to changing their reviews, stuff like that.
Yeah, I always said with myself, and like what I'm doing is like, as long as I'm going with like the best intentions, like I never said I wasn't going to screw up, right?
Yeah.
Like I never said I wasn't going to have bad interviews, but it's like the attitude of like, okay, tell me what I can do. Like, I'll take these transcripts, I'll send them to people, be like, yo, I want you to like grade me on how I did, how
That's
I interviewed.
Cool. Do you ever ask AI?
Oh yeah. Everything.
And what are you getting out of 10?
So I ask it to give me letter grades, and some people, like, sometimes I'll get some that are like C, and then or other times where I'm like even a harsher critic on myself, where I'm like, oh, I think the AI's taking it easy on me. Yeah. Like, I think it's being too nice. So I'm like, I think you should be a little bit more like harsher, right?
Yeah.
But the thing with AI is, it's not the system itself, it's the operator of that system, right? It's like, the more creative you can be and the more context that you give a program like that, the better answer you're going to get, right? Yeah. So I find with that, it's very good in terms of like analyzing what I'm doing and stuff. But I think I kind of revolve around more like intuition. Like, as much as I use these systems, I revolve around more intuition when you leave. Like, I remember I finished one interview and a guy goes, I hope I made some really good content for you. And I was like, oh. I was like, what does that mean?
Interesting.
Yeah, I was like, what an interesting way. Hope I made some good content for you. It's like, for us. Yeah. So even something like that, and I just hang on to it. And it's the same thing where it's like, that's something I really had to get around in terms of being like, okay, it's not going to be forever. Or someone's going to come and they're not going to have the best time, or they're going to not feel like they answered the questions the right way. And you just kind of got to be like, hey, all I can do is ask the questions and be here. But going in back to like Boxcar Coffee, what led you to like the design with like the high neons and like the like that type of, because that's the first thing I noticed when I came in was like
the Boxcar sign. Yeah, I think that's the most photographed sign in the city.
Yeah,
I actually legitimately think that. If anyone can prove me wrong, try. But we wanted, so there's some elements of Boxcar. Okay, so It's called Boxcar because I have a house that was built out of a train car, a boxcar, right? So how resilient were people in the 30s that they could take train cars and build houses, okay? Which is pretty cool. So we thought, okay, there's nostalgia. You like trains, so we threw Boxcar. Even the seating area is an old boxcar inside, right? Like how it's executed. The colors are actually a 1930s color, green. So when you go in there, you're like, this is a memory of some kind I've seen on TV, but they're all subtle elements that like lead up to something of like nostalgia, but modern, right? I'm married to a Mexican architect, so green was a way to achieve Mexico without being too cheesy, if I'm being totally honest, and we agreed on that. But yeah, and then the courtyard, we tried to make an experience when you come. We don't have a sign to get in. We don't have a sign on the building. You don't even know what the bathroom is. Yeah. And some of that's psychological, but you once you're there, you're like, hey, I'm part of a club. I know the secret code. I get asked every day, you don't have a sign on the building. I was driving around the block. I was like, hey, you made it. Yeah. You got here. Yeah. So, it takes a little bit of time. Travel ahead, I guess. Yeah. But yeah, so all those little elements really matter. And, we did the whole building. So we renovate them all. So each unit has its own identity. So it's really about, we've been asked to expand a lot to different areas of the city, but I'm like, how do you emulate the same
experience?
An experience for someone. And I'm making it sound like an amazing place. I do think it is, but it
really is. It really is. Like that. I went there the first time, and then not only that, what was interesting was then I started telling other people about it, and they're like, nice. Oh, that's the shit.
Appreciate
so it was one of those things where not only in my personal experience, but like my experience communicating with other people, it was like and then we went together, Nice. So it was one of those things where this is a case study of like it actually, I went there myself, and then I continued, and then I was bringing my friends there, and my friends were bringing me there, right? So it became one of these places.
That's
and
awesome.
Especially the fact that like you guys still allow pets, right? In the court. Yeah, of course. So even something like that, right? It's just another little additive of like, hey, so when you look at like your advancement and how that looks, what would you say is the biggest fear of like growth in that space? Do you want it to just be like its own pocket and like this own mainstay of say for instance like a Vanderpump Rules where it's like, okay, well there can only be one, so what does that look like for you?
Yeah, so we always had a plan to do more there. We are currently, I'll say it first here, but we are going to be hopefully building a building behind Boxcar.
Okay.
And we want to put in an ice cream shop and a breakfast place called Caboose and N Scale. N Scale is a really weird name, but it's actually the linear scale of a railway car, those little guys you get.
Yeah.
But it's a bit of a food hub. So it's like, how do you kind of expand the experience of like the courtyard and micro suites on top and kind of create a destination for people? The thing about coffee is, and the newness in Edmonton and restaurants in general, it's like, how do you keep people coming? There's kind of that rule. It's like, I think the first time it's an 11% chance of coming, then it goes to 40, then it's like you're set for life, right?
Right.
But, there's always something new competing with you, and the Calder's great. And, you have some pocket there. There's a lawyer's office, a hair salon, but
yeah, that's a great walking area.
It's walking. The lawyer's getting an hour. Like, we need a bit more than that.
Yeah.
And so there's not really like business, because what people want, at least in my opinion, is, the butcher, those types of businesses. So it's like, we're going to expand to do that. Is this the goal?
So is the idea like creating like a kind of like park or like complex in some sense, right? Where it's like you have like little different businesses and stuff.
It's like a food hall, but outside.
Yeah.
And then it's like, I love the mix you get. Like, you'll be there, but beside you is a tenant.
Mm-hmm.
And, the tenants listening to you talk about the building, but it's actually where they live.
Mm-hmm.
And usually it's positive, right?
Yeah.
But it's a cool, and then all of a sudden they turn to you and they're like, hey, I live there.
And especially in an area that's not like metropolis, downtown Edmonton,
Exactly.
right? Like it still has a suburban feel. Now, is there any like logistical like setbacks? Like in terms of
Hey, the
like
city's always a setback, man.
yeah, in terms of like permits
Yeah.
and stuff like that. Like is
You
that
know-
usually the biggest like roadblock?
For us, there's like a lot of development going on. Commercial lending's tough. You're just, there's thresholds that are met. So we've had some hurdles with actually just getting our finances legitimized. We're there now, which is amazing. We have some white knight flying in from Toronto to save us,
Yeah, nice.
which is great.
Yeah.
But, and we met with him yesterday. He literally flew from Toronto to meet us. He was so inspired by this project. I sold it, I guess, on the phone. And he's like, let's get this done type of thing, which is cool.
That's great. How do you ever worry that like you have like a jetpack strapped to you and you're like, oh, I don't want to crash out?
Yeah.
Like, do you ever worry that like with the success comes the responsibility? And because I always worry, like, because I'll reach out to some crazy people.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm not sure if what if they turn around and they were like, yeah, let's do it.
Yeah.
And you're like, shit.
Yeah. Now
Am I ready?
Yeah.
So do you ever worry that like you're kind of like always like lifting yourself up? And do you ever worry that like there is a chance of like implosion?
Yeah, like my biggest worry is making sure people have a job, right? And I'm very fortunate right now with the city and my current situation. I don't really need money from Boxcar.
Right.
I just let it sit there and I kind of make sure. Trust me, you're not retiring on coffee. It doesn't matter.
No.
Sorry to tell you,
It's
that.
a labor of love.
Yeah, you're peddling, right? But it's I want to make sure people are happy and employed, and everybody that works there lives in Calder, which
Right.
is just crazy to me. Like they're all that local. They've been there 2 years, like OGs, right?
Yeah.
So it tells you you've created something good. But we're still, you watch the numbers, like how many new versus old. What can you do that's kind of the same but different to keep yourself relevant? We are the largest Instagram presence in Edmonton for a coffee shop. Thank God.
Yeah.
That keeps us going, so we get good visibility and support like that. But this is kind of why we're doing the next journey, because you might bring your girlfriend who doesn't drink coffee, but maybe she'll have ice cream or she'll have breakfast. And it's about just an experience for people. And deep down, I'm a bit biased. I look at Edmonton when my family would come here, and I'd be like, where do you go in Edmonton when you bring someone? And there's places, you go to Rogers, you go to West Ed, but I want the north side spot. It's like I want people to come to Edmonton and say, hey, we got to go to the Boxcar, check out Caboose, and we're gonna have a rooftop patio and just really have an experience in the north side.
Was one of your considerations when building it like retaining some sort of heritage with Calder? Like, was that something as well where you were like, hey, I want to make sure like this is also like feeding in to like the roots of what I'm trying to do?
Yeah, like the tie to the name.
Yeah.
The street is actually a cultural heritage landscape. It's designated by the city, believe it or not, which basically gives no protection at all. But it tells you that landscape is important. And I did a tour this just a month ago, a Jane's Walk it's called, where you walk around the neighborhood, and we did a historic tour. And a lot of those people were the customers at Boxcar. And so, you're getting people interested in old stuff, and, infill's the trending topic in Edmonton right now. But, people are sometimes the best heritage is the one you already have. And, how do you protect it? Because a little bungalow is valuable and it has a history in Calder. So, yeah, it's Boxcar and the nostalgia it brings. And Calder has this connection with almost everyone I meet knows somebody who's from Calder. Either they worked on CN, their grandma lived there, they grew up there, they all got the heck out of there at some point. But it's brought them back, and I think they have a new appreciation. I always say there's south side cars and north side cars, and sometimes you see that south side car park out front, and you're like, wow, they're leaving with a good impression.
Yeah.
Right? And they're like, wow, this old neighborhood's not that bad.
Yeah, I think a lot of what I really appreciate about it is like it's in-house, right? When like I always bring it back to like my favorite sport, basketball. You look at like these teams right now, like Oklahoma City.
Yeah.
They retain their draft picks. They train in-house. They hire people from the city. They everything, and now they're winning championships. And it's like it's very wholesome. It's very inspiring, and it kind of leads us in to like where your next set of aspirations are, where you're looking at running for city council.
Yes.
So let's kind of get into that. When did you find the moment where you were like, oh, I should do this, or there's a need, or like I feel like this is where I can step in?
Yeah, I've always, my whole life, people have said, you should run for politics. Like, I've always had a keen interest. Government has a value. It's important for cities, right? It sets the tone. It sets the future, whether you like it or not as a citizen, right? And having a business, it was about a year ahead. I was at the city, and I was realizing that local business, not to be dramatic, but it's being crushed in Edmonton.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of, we're something like 30% vacant right now. Some of it's COVID, but a lot of it is policy. Mm-hmm. And, you hear about policy and bureaucracy all the time, right? And then I sat down, I was like, man, like, to open up my coffee shop, I had 37 inspections. And then to run it already year to date, I've had 7 to just check stuff. Meanwhile, my window's getting broken into with no service. And so you think to yourself, like, something's missing.
Yeah.
Like, you're trying to just survive.
The math ain't math.
The math, yeah, exactly. And so October 20th is the day this year. So basically last October 19th, I was a great position in the city, but you get kind of like pigeonholed into what you do, and you can't really go anywhere else. And my boss was young, and he's not going anywhere. And I was like, you know what, now's the time. Luckily, actually, the city had like get so much vacation, pay ahead to get time off. So right. I was like, I took it strategically 1 year ahead.
Right.
So I'm on vacation.
Right.
But then I thought, you know what, leaving teams dangling without leadership, I'm just like, and I'm going to win. Yeah. So I was like, I just gave it up.
Right.
And so I'm just running. And so I, just with everything where the city, highest tax, highest debt, vacancy, having a planning background, but also I'm an economist. I took finance. And so I thought, I think I can make real change right now. Planning, but with a fiscal mindset. Good community. I thought, Boxcar's given me a bit of cred. Mm-hmm. I go to people's doors and they're like, oh, you're the Boxcar guy. Oh. And I'm like, yeah, wow, what an impact, right? Yeah. That you're reaching up here in Albany or wherever you are. And and the people who haven't been there, I'll at the door, I'll say, hey, here's a free coffee on me. Thanks for listening or whatever. 20 minutes later, they're there having coffee, and they're like, wow, look what you've done. I'm like, yeah, let's take this and like make Edmonton better. And so it's been great. And obviously platforms change because as I talk, you're kind of telling me new stuff that I might not know. I don't know everything. I know a lot. I know the city, and I know there's a lot of ways to improve the city, but it's a dance. You can't just go in there like a bulldozer, but you have to have relationships, and that's a gap right now at the city in a lot of ways with council. And so I'm like, well, I have good relationships. I know the community. I have a business. I think, you can make it better.
So So as a part of city council, so how many wards are there? Like, how many wards are there, and how does that, like, is this like you guys would go to council, vote, and that's kind of how this would work? People would table certain stuff?
Yeah, all pet projects. No, I'm just kidding. There's 12, and then the mayor.
Okay.
And so, everyone's kind of trying to achieve a goal. So you have administration will send you information. But, you hear from your residents, so the north side, we are underserviced for transit. But what people might not understand is, well, we don't have enough people to have the transit. So it's like you build the density, so there's a lot of nuances there. But in theory, you're trying to work together to achieve a goal. And often there is pet projects that come into play because your ward might want something. We don't have the proper fire hall, or we don't have a rec center. And then you're setting the taxes, you're determining the infill, you're buying the land, you're kind of determining all that stuff on behalf of citizens. You're supposed to be getting feedback, but feedback's kind of a facade right now. Consultation, you always hear the thing, hey, I talked at something, but nothing was listened to. But I had a friend who said to me, actually recently, he's like, sometimes the city has to do things for the betterment of people, even though that's not what they want or they know yet. Sometimes you just have to grant city. But right now, it's actually, in my opinion, too extreme. Right. Everything's just too much. We just kind of have to reasonable it in a little bit.
That's interesting. So, do you ever worry that like putting yourself in a position like this, that like how much consideration do you have to have on like your public image now, and like how you represent yourself, and like how that kind of is fluid between everything now, of like, oh, if I get elected for city council and then like people think I do a shit job, they stop coming getting coffee, and then if they stop getting coffee, I'm losing the sense of community. And like, are there things that you kind of, I don't want to say like publicity stunts or anything like that, but like, are there any like initiatives or things that you try to do to like create that credibility or like reliableness?
Yeah, like I'm already thinking and trying to somewhat move away from the coffee shop, and I know a lot about things the city has or does, and I'm trying to really skate a really transparent line, because I only do things that are public, even though I know a lot of key people. I can probably get information, but it's really important to me that I'm really transparent about everything, even elections, like with Boxcar, right? I'm doing senior events. I give free coffee on behalf of Jesse Watson's campaign. It's seniors week. Why not celebrate them with a free coffee? But I've already had 7 ethics complaints about that. People saying you're buying votes with coffee. And I'm like, well, if someone's going to vote because of a cup of coffee, we got bigger issues here.
Right.
But yeah,
but it's interesting that people even like, it's interesting that like that minute detail, was there ever a thing where you're like, I didn't know people were looking that hard?
Yeah. And then I realized that I am being watched like hardcore, right, by everybody. And which is fine. Like, people, some are in positions, some have interests, some are special interests.
You don't get paranoid?
Yeah, I did speak about one thing, and then later I heard that they wanted my head on a silver platter. But you know what? Like, that's when you make change. That's the change that's needed.
Yeah.
And so I'm not afraid to do that. Like, I got a business, you pay taxes. We all have an objective to just live in a better city, and special interests may or may not help with that. Often it doesn't necessarily help the greater good. And so, yeah, I'm trying to differentiate myself in those ways, so I have like a proven track record and say, this is what I would do. Like, I'm not going to be influenced by something.
Do you find when you speak to like the residents of your like ward area, the problems are all the same, or do you think it's like a shotgun scatter of like, oh, this person wants it, this guy wants more parking, this guy wants it, or is it kind of like something that you can narrow down and be like, okay, I know exactly what needs to be done? Yeah,
like the ward's big. It's 90,000 people, which is way too big.
Yeah.
The province is 30.
Do they ever rezone? Do they ever do like rezone?
I think they're going to eventually, because just if you think about it, you're elected and you have even 100 people emailing you a day. It's like, wow. Yeah, and then there are issues you can't solve.
Yeah.
Or try to. But it goes from Inglewood Science Center all the way up to the Henday, Rapperswil, Castle Downs. South of the Yellowhead is a totally different world than north of the Yellowhead. There's homeless issues, a lot of house encampments. There's a lot more drugs. There's shelters. North up here in the north side, it's taxes. Yeah. It's a different, the roads are bad. It's just a different, they don't want bike lanes up here. They will fight to the death to not have a bike lane. Down there, they want bike lanes. So you're actually trying to balance that. That's why the wards are almost too big, because you're trying to juggle competing interests. But generally speaking, everyone is like, taxes have gone up 25% in 4 years. Whether that matters to you, if you have money, it often doesn't. Debt is at the all-time high. It's $400 million a year just to service the debt. Whether debt's a real thing, whatever,
who knows?
That's a whole other topic. When you hear those things, you're like, wow. Like, everyone generally across the board is like, something just feels off. Everything's just a bit too much. And that might be from the US, that might be from the federal stuff, just everything. Like, there's just a lot of issues, I think, in governments overall. So people are just a little bit more aware these days. But housing people, it's important for everyone. Right. We want people housed. We don't want people on drugs. Most people have consensus about that. Infill, they're scared of. Most people, I like infill, but to a point. I'm a planner. I care. But so those are tend to be the consensus, kind of what global and the media outlets push as well. That's what people think about. But overall, I think people are tied together that they want to be heard. They want information and truth, data, right? Not just if I say to you, hey, something's not safe, and you're like, well, what does that mean? And I'm like, sorry, I can't tell you. That erodes trust, right? And it seems like basic 101 government. So the city can do better there.
So I have two questions. One question is, do you find that wrapping your head around the amount of analytics in both city council and owning a coffee shop is probably like brain melting? And is there a lot of upkeep in that? Is there a lot of like, you're always having to like brush up on this, brush up on that, keeping up with trends, keeping up with whatever's going on?
Well, so one thing about a campaign, so you door knock, whether that's an outdated process, that's a whole other topic of conversation. But as I door knock, I actually listen to council.
Right.
So rather than just walking, I listen, because knowing what council doing is probably impossible for the average person unless you know the city. Even how the meetings are run, you're like, where the heck are we in the agenda? Just basic stuff, right? So governance. So I try to listen just to stay on top of stuff. Once you start a campaign, you kind of get data nerds that want to help you with stuff. So they start pulling information,
coming up with stats.
Yeah. And you're like, is it real?
Yeah. Just the biggest obscured stat. And you're like, all right, I get it.
Yeah. And, I use ChatGPT a lot just to formulate my thoughts, because I started I try to reply to everybody, right? But my posts right now, some of them are getting 100,000 views, and I'm like getting 400 comments. And so I was being grammatically incorrect. And people actually called me out, says like, you can't even type a sentence, man.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, that's actually really important. I should take a second more to just groom it up. So yeah, you try to balance all that. Boxcar, the team is so good.
Yeah.
Like it's not set it and forget it. I'm there basically every day.
Right.
I hold like standing coffees to meet with people Wednesdays and Saturdays at 10 o'clock.
Yeah.
Just so I'm around there enough that I can talk to people and kind of know what's going on.
But you're not there so much that it's like you're neglecting other roles and duties. Yeah, so now, when you're doing these like door walks and stuff, how much is it the notion of like it's about like education that people actually just don't know what's going on? Is it more of getting on the same page with someone, or is it more like educating someone in actually what you're able to do?
Yeah, what's really interesting is city government is the lowest turnout, and yet it's the most impactful. It's like the nuts and bolts. It's not about ideology, even though now it's becoming about ideology. There's parties in city government now. I'm independent. But so I go to a door and some people are like, there's an election? Some people are like, I want that girl gone. I'm putting your sign on or I've seen you on Facebook or whatever, right? So it's a total spectrum. But I find that most people, you try to capture a brief information in the beginning. It's like, hey, I'm Jesse. I'm running. How's it going up here? People say, good. You're like, no issues off the top of mind? No. It's like, wow, okay, the city's great. Sometimes they'll call me after, they need to think, right? You have to have that emotional and social intelligence level, like, because you got to gauge a room, you got to read people.
Yeah, the person's in their shower robe and they're like, they're like, I'm good. You're like, they're busy.
Literally, exactly.
I'm sure they'll have something. Like reading the room.
But what I love about door knocking is you get to find out, this might sound creepy, where people live. So many people I know, I've worked with over the years. All of a sudden I open the door, they're like, hi, Jesse. I'm like,
oh, hello.
And sometimes I can't remember their name because it was like 5 years ago. I was like, yes, how's it going? Hello, you. But no, often it's just funny. You get to learn where people live and then what's important to them. And, you start to try to judge books by, you get a vibe of the neighborhood and stuff like that. But yeah, you get to have really good conversations. I would say I know a lot already of what I think matters. Just I was at the city, I have a business, I know Edmonton, I have what's important to me. But already I started early because there's incumbents and there's other people running and I just had time. But my platform's changed. Right. My website was really bad in the beginning. It's got better-ish. But you're always evolving based on what people say. And like, I don't know everything, right?
Is there like an end goal? Do you have like an end game? Like, is there something like in your mind, like, okay, once I'm able to achieve this, or once I'm able to like affect this type of change, like, is there something like that, or is it more of like a touch and go?
Yeah, no, it's 4 years, a term, right? But you can honestly make a lot of change with the right team, right? Like Edmonton, we've kind of created an unsustainable city just on paper, right? There's like a quick math suburban. For every $1 house in tax, it costs you $10 as a city.
Right.
It's like it's a failed model.
Right.
So it's like but then I have a heritage house. And I don't want an 8-story building beside me. Right. But we need it to succeed. So you're like, okay, we can achieve balance, right? There's smart ways to build stuff. People ask me all the time, why would you spend $100 million on bike lanes? Right? It's like, well, people have right to mode and drive safe. So I think when I'm in there, I could, there's a couple things I'd want to focus on. The majority of our projects are over budget. Like, $1 billion in 4 years, which It's like, okay, you just think about that plus contingency. You're like, there's a problem that needs to be solved, which correlates to the entire tax increase, right? Just on paper. We give a lot of money out to a lot of organizations with really no accountability. So
now, when you talk about like bike lanes and stuff, and when people like question it, is there not like a statistical backing of like something where you can be like something where you can like base your judgment off of, or is it a lot of times it really is like a sitting on the fence where it's like there's enough evidence to prove for it, and there's enough evidence, and kind of how do you base that judgment of like where is it like a personal thing, is it a fact-based thing?
There's not much fact. No. If I'm being perfectly honest. Edmonton, we're trying to be something. We always try to be somewhere else, but yet we're ourselves.
Right.
And, Done Loose isn't Bonnie Doon, but we're trying to fit communities into boxes for whatever reason and whatever agenda. But it's not working, right? So I look at a bike lane and I'll be shown pictures of Amsterdam, this paradise of biking. Great, I agree. Density's different, climate's different. So in the beginning, there's a couple spots on the north side that are pretty going through a renewal. And there's a policy called Complete Streets. We're going to put in a bike lane. So I walked this whole neighborhood for literally 5 days with a team, knocking everyone's doors. It's the biggest one on the north side. And I did not see one walker or biker or car for 5 days. Yeah. And then you hear everyone was at work. Okay, then I went at nighttime. Oh, everyone's watching the Oilers game. Okay. Yeah. There's always a reason.
Yeah.
But I just look at it, it's like, well, anecdotally, we'll build it, they'll come. And that's a planning fundamental, right? You build it, they will come. It's like, but will they? Yeah. And so it's, I look at downtown, you have a 12-foot sidewalk because everyone's walking, there's just more density. To me, it's like data like that. It's like probably you don't need a 12-foot sidewalk on the north side where no one's walking. And you could, as a city, do a bit more data monitoring, checking, tracking to see that. And there is a bit of build it, they will come. But I think we just have to make it reasonable. It's not just yes or no, which is where it's at right now.
And and what people don't consider too is the more analytics you're asking for, the more bloated the project becomes. It's well, who's going to take that data? Who's going to research that, right? And it's that's $100,000. That's $100,000. Once you start adding people's salaries and stuff. So when October 20th, what do you have in place from now till October 20th in terms of appearances or like things that you're doing, community events, and like is there anything more that you need to get accomplished from now until then to like grow your platform?
Yeah. My goal is to be the most knocked doors of any candidate ever.
The door knocker.
The door knocker, man. Campaigns are multimodal, right? Like there's social, there's whatever, door knocking, signage. Is it relevant? Isn't it anymore? No strategist can seem to tell me. But, I'm like, okay, there's 30,000 literal doors in the ward. Can I achieve that goal with the team? I'd love to. Because it does translate to who you find out who votes, how they vote. They want to support you, whether it's money. Trust me, you need money to run a campaign, signage, whatever. That's great. So that's helpful. I usually have standing coffee things. I do little events at different coffee shops. I'm doing one upcoming with somebody at Mocha. We're going to do a big barbecue there.
Nice.
Go to senior center, try to just get out there. What's interesting is campaigns, because Edmonton, it is small. It is a small city. People know it's like a town. And so there is a lot of partisan issues. You'll go to somewhere, say, hey, can I just meet with people to talk to them about politics? It's like, well, you can't because you're running. But then you find out that the incumbent is going even though they're running. Right. But they have the right to go. And so
it's like bureaucracy.
It's just how it goes. And so I'm going to a market, Castle Downs Farmers Market. I'm going to be there. I'm going actually as Boxcar and Jesse, the campaign guy. And we're going to have a split booth, and it'll be awesome. And it's opportunities like that. I set up coffee booths randomly at Beaumaris, Lake Beaumaris, the dog park, any way to really get the word out.
Is the splitting the booth like in effort to like protect your brand as well?
Yes. Also, it's an entry. I can't literally go.
Like it's a legal thing as well. Like,
but also Boxcar, we've never done really grab and go stuff. And it's like, let's try it. Hey, there's a market. A lot of coffee shops do markets. And so we're going to set it up there, and that's where volunteers come. They're like, hey, can I help? Can I do something? And some don't like door knocking. You're like, yeah, can you like man Boxcar while I talk to people? And people actually, coffee is the best entry to conversation, man. It's the epitome of what it is, like the cheers of coffee, right?
It's like the proverbial like office water fountain,
literally.
Thank you very much for coming out.
Of course.
I thought this was amazing. You gave us a lot to think about. You gave our audience, I hope this sits with you, and I hope anybody in the local area, if you get the chance in the Calder area, be sure to check out Boxcar Coffee. It's what is it? What's the website called? JesseWatson.ca.
Yep.
Instagram, Facebook,
all there.
Everything.
Yeah.
We'll put all of that in the descriptions below. Is there anything you'd like to leave our audience off with before we sign off?
I would leave with, if you know a senior who's in isolation, right now is Seniors Week. Bring them for a free coffee on me, on Boxcar. Get them out of their house. Isolation's brutal these days. And secondly, get out to vote on October 20th because it is the most important election for you.
Right on. And with that has been another episode of Solo Spotlight with Jesse Watson. Be sure to check him out on all of his social medias, as well as go and vote in the municipal election. And don't forget to follow us, Spare Bedroom Studios. Give us a like if you enjoyed this conversation. Send it to a friend in the Edmonton area. And with that, signing off.